Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson Football Channel. We are going to talk today about the handover between Frank Lampard as Chelsea manager interim at the end of this season to Mauricio Pochettino, the man who many believe could finally be the dynasty manager that Chelsea fans have dreamed of and that Pochettino himself has dreamed of as a manager. I'm not getting carried away and saying that I think that's going to happen because you guys have called me out for it. I thought Graham Potter was going to be that guy, so how dare I jinx the situation? Oh, I can't even finish the sentence. I can't stand all these little jinxy here, jinxy there comments as if this is a game of flipping Pokemon cards. We're going to talk today about Frank Lampard's comments in various different press conferences towards the end of his interim role as Chelsea manager, because what Frank Lampard has said, what we need to remember, managers in press conferences, especially in the Premier League, it is often a toned down version of what would be said to the players, what he probably says to his wife behind closed doors, what he probably says to best mate John Terry as well, who's now obviously working his coaching staff at Leicester City. But what we hear from Frank Lampard is going to be an incredibly tame version of the truth. And as fans, that is where we get to play the role of, okay, let's extrapolate this information that Lampard has said, and let's basically call a spade a spade. We can say that as fans. I can say it as a YouTuber. Frank can't really go out there and say, Kai Havertz is an awful striker, but because no one else is any good, I've got to play him there. That's what we see and witness, and we're like, why are we doing this again? But the fact of the matter is, that's probably something along the lines of what Lampard is thinking. Let's just be real about this situation here. When we look through this Chelsea team, there is a massive squad of players, something that we have believed that Mauricio Pochettino wants to change. Pochettino doesn't want a massive squad. He wants a small squad with the profiles of players that he wants to work with in the systems that he wants to implement. So, let's take a little look now at some of Frank Lampard's comments. Let's talk about Lampard's emotion. What is your overriding emotion now it's over? This is after the game at the weekend. I don't know really. There have been challenges. Yep. It's been enjoyable to be back working at this club because of the feeling I have for it. I don't like losing games. We lost too many games. When I look back at the situation I came into, I think this season the situation was sown before that. I came in at the back end of the season where some challenges had probably grown. You live and learn in everything. And I'm fortunate I can be at this club working for it. So I really appreciate that. I'm pretty level-headed about it. For me, this is Lampard saying, well, thank you for inviting me back, but at the same time, there was nothing I could do because we were done before I walked through the door. And to be quite honest, I think he's right. As much as I'm not going to sit here and defend Frank Lampard because quite frankly, my opinion when he walked in the door, you've seen the thumbnails, you've seen the photos, they've been spreaded over the internet. Look how wrong Mr. Benson was. Yeah, I was absolutely incorrect. I was excited about Lampard because I'd lost all my excitement about Graham Potter. I hated the football that we played. We were losing too many matches. We were getting beaten against teams that have ended up relegated in the Premier League. And I thought Frank Lampard could come in, and because he's Frank Lampard, because he knows what it is to be Chelsea, I thought he could come in and change this. But as he says himself, the situation was sown before that. The players had given up, dropped the standards, which is the next kind of Lexis we're going to go in and dissect. The standards had dropped so low, even before Lampard walked in, that I think this is a very fair assessment. I genuinely believe that as the season went on, yes, there were a lot of games where we still feel like we should have done better, but when you take some of the defeats that Lampard got, you've got losses to Man United, Arsenal, Man City in there, games that by the point that Graham Potter was sacked, you expect Chelsea to lose all three of those. So a lot of the games that Lampard loses are games that we would have lost under Graham Potter too. In the same breath, a lot of people are saying, well, was there any point in tarnishing Lampard's legacy by bringing him in at this point of the season when we could have just stuck it out with Graham Potter and it might have got better? It wasn't going to go and get any better. If Graham Potter would have stayed, Chelsea would still be in the bottom half of the table because Graham Potter had lost this dressing room too. Graham Potter had lost the standards that Chelsea would have expected. So as much as this sounds like I'm defending Lampard, if you need me to repeat it, I've said it before in the last couple of videos, Lampard shouldn't get another job in the Premier League again, based on what we saw at Everton and based on how he didn't change anything at Chelsea. So if you were leaving a note for the next guy, what would the message be? When you are Chelsea and you had a season like we've had, there are obviously things that need to improve. I'm not sure that note should be a public one. If anyone wants me to leave a note or speak to me, they can pick up the phone anytime they want. It's clear there are things that I would see that need to improve, but the new manager will see them with his own eyes and he will have a pre-season to work with the team. They need that. We're not physically competitive enough. Newcastle are. This is what I said in my match preview against Newcastle. Newcastle are a team fighting for one another, willing to be physical and battle in a league that is incredibly competitive. The small teams can beat the big teams. Brentford aren't necessarily a small team, but they were competitive with Man City on the final day. They beat Manchester City, a team that had kind of just like started their holidays already, but then a good team fighting for themselves can beat them. Brentford, perfect sign. Newcastle, perfect showing. They know that there are probably squads out there with better players, but with Eddie Howe in charge, with that ability to tune in to being a Newcastle player, to fight for that crest, to fight for the city that have only dreamed of European football. That is exactly what they did. And it's exactly what Chelsea didn't do. We will have the capability as a club and for the new manager to get the squad in the place he wants it to be. We can spend money, we can sell players. The squad has been too deep, and that's the biggest challenge I've found day to day. Coming in and trying to work with big numbers and players that are maybe a little bit, for whatever reason, disillusioned, for right or wrong, that they're not playing or they might be leaving. Those situations can be sorted out now, and they have to be. What Frank Lampard is saying here is, there are players that when he arrived at Chelsea Football Club for this interim caretaker job at the end of the season, there were players who literally didn't want to train, that don't want to be at Chelsea. How can anybody have expected Frank Lampard to walk in to a dressing room and look at some of these players who were like, please get me to my summer holidays, please get me my next sign-on bonus, I'm leaving this club. What was he ever going to do? Disillusioned. Like, how can you be disillusioned as a footballer contracted to play for Chelsea Football Club? And how can you be disillusioned at the fact that you're not getting game time when you've got 25 other teammates fighting for the same flipping thing, plus more? And this is a mentality disaster. And as much as I'm saying all of this today because I can understand it in an empath kind of manner towards Frank, it's not saying that Lampard, it's not his fault, but at the same time, it's almost borderline not. Everything about what's happened this season is a shambles. And it's a disgrace that we even sat here looking at Frank Lampard's final comments as interim Chelsea manager, being like, well, yeah, there's a lot of disillusioned players here. What do you mean disillusioned? These players are contracted, paying hundreds of thousands a week to play for Chelsea Football Club, and you walk through the door and they're disillusioned because they want to go. Absolute, complete and utter madness. We're not going to talk too much about the comments that Frank has made about his next job. We're going to talk about the comments about standards. Standards collectively have dropped. I can be honest about that, particularly as it's the last game. I might not see some of them that much anymore anyway. The standards for a club like Chelsea have to be at a maximum or you won't be physically competitive enough. Frank Lampard talks about standards at the end, because if he talks about standards during the season, then that is basically the manager alluding to the fact that there are no standards anymore at Chelsea Football Club. Let's be really honest about this here, because Mauricio Pochettino is now coming into a club where the standards have dropped so incredibly low that it's unrecognisable. Frank Lampard comes in having won every trophy there is to win with Chelsea over his playing days, and he, even in his first stint as a manager, he didn't do an awful job. The second time he comes in, and it's so evident, not only from the physical, the way that we see it, right, from the eye, we can see, and Frank Lampard can see coming in, that there is not that same passion. There isn't the understanding of what being a Chelsea player means. Those standards have dropped. When you look at the numbers, goals, we scored 50 goals in 50 games this season, 1 goal a game. The standards have dropped. When you look at the league table position, the standards have dropped to an unprecedented low in the Chelsea Premier League era. Frank Lampard saw this from the moment he walked through the door, but can only say it at the end of the season when, as he says here, I'm probably not going to see these players much anymore. Mauricio Pochettino, let's not beat around the bush here. Mauricio Pochettino is a fantastic manager, a direct upgrade of Frank Lampard as a coach, as a manager who has got credibility from what he's done in the past. But Mauricio Pochettino has an incredibly difficult job here. And as much as throughout the course of this pre-season, the closed season, we've got 51 days from today until Chelsea play Wrexham in a blockbuster Hollywood friendly. During that 51 days, players are going to be on holiday. A lot of players are going to be relieved. A lot of players are going to be sold. Some players are going to be bought in. What Pochettino needs to do from minute number one, now that he's announced as Chelsea's manager, is set some standards. Set some absolutely unquestionable mentality traits. If you're going to be late for the coach because you took a nap after training and you bounce back to your own gaff, piss off. You are not welcome at Chelsea Football Club. If you're not going to be calling out your teammates as men for top quality standards, top quality training and communication. Look at these Chelsea players. You know, Thiago Silva the other day, there's a moment where he holds the ball for 25 seconds in the middle of the pitch. Only Enzo is screaming for it, but he's right next to Thiago Silva. And in the end, Silva goes back to Chalobah. There is no communication in this Chelsea team. If you need to take it back to basics, let's go to Boy Scouts. Let's go and do one random fact about me around the circle and pass the flipping pillow if we're struggling. We need to start from the beginning. Noni Madueke said it himself. He said, next season we need to go back to basics. Noni, absolutely correct. Let's start with the basics. And that is why Chelsea are in a position here where, with the money we've got, with the ability to trim this squad down, and with an excellent coach like Pochettino taking over from Frank Lampard, we are in a position here where we might not have to go from 12th to 10th and praise progress. We could go from 12th to 6th, 12th to 4th, possibly, if everything is hammered in. And these standards that Frank Lampard has talked about, that we've looked through these comments today, this is the number one. We're going to make the signings brilliant, but when the signings walk through the door, let's make sure they walk into a training ground, to a dressing room where all of these really quite pathetic efforts that we've put in for the majority of this season, all gone, squished, not brushed under the rug, hammered home and beaten, proverbially, out of these players. Pochettino's got to come in here and own this dressing room. Be the leader that these players just haven't been able to be, and that the managers who have come in, Potter, Lampard, haven't been able to be either. It's an incredibly tough job. But let's hope and pray that Pochettino has got what it takes to nail this home. Thank you guys for watching this video today. If you did enjoy it, be sure to hit the like button. Please be sure to join the Telegram, link at the top of the description. There's going to be a signed shirt giveaway coming this week, and it is in partnership with Go Markets, Chelsea's trading partner. I'm making money with these guys. I'm learning about trading. Never did it before, and a load of people who watch these videos are doing the same. Check the link at the top of the description to find out more. Come on, you Blues.